Hi, everyone. I'm Bethann Merkle. I've been working at the intersection of science communication, art, education, and public engagement for more than a decade. I'm going to focus on some of the things that have caused me to change my career direction over the years. A list of degrees or work experiences doesn't tell anyone's full story. And in my case, it's one of chances, relationships, and of doggedly putting art and science together. I'm a first-generation college student. I grew up on food stamps in a rural town in Montana. Mine is a small town and a big family. I'm one of 25 first cousins. My mom is one of 60. Very few people I knew when I was young had a university degree of any kind. The world we understood involved people with one-word jobs: teacher, doctor, lawyer, rancher. Today, I do work that I couldn't have imagined, work that is hard to explain when I go back home. It can also be hard to explain to the ecologists I work with. I'm a practitioner, researcher, and instructor of science communication at the University of Wyoming. I wear several hats on campus, and a lot of my projects involve finding ways to bring art and science together. Through my publications, teaching, and projects within ESA and at my university, I advocate for a diverse, inclusive view of who belongs in science, who has access to science, and who represents science. Back when I was growing up, I'd never heard of a scientist. I also didn't know what an arts-based career could look like. No one in my family has ever considered themselves an artist, and no one actively made anything visually creative. Except for one nurse, no one was in the medical profession, let alone in science. Even so, I loved the science, art, literature, and music classes offered at my little high school. Between a single year as an engineering major, transferring to a different college, and taking a one-year program that totally transformed my ecologically ignorant self into a conservation-oriented artist, educator, and community organizer, college was a wild ride. One important development was learning about the field journal. It was the first space in my life where my interests in art and science, in nature and creative expression, could really overlap. It was also a safe space to grapple with the dissonance between my conservative childhood and the scientific information I was soaking up in classes like conservation, ecology, and ecological perspectives of Native Americans. I journaled compulsively all through that one-year conservation program. We were graded on our journal entries after every field trip, and quite a few of my classmates came to actually despise these assignments. It took me the whole year to understand why. Some of them hadn't had any art instruction since elementary school, and they just didn't have the skills to draw confidently. I gave a drawing workshop during our last long field trip, and those classmates asked our instructors why we hadn't done that at the beginning. The instructors listened. For the next several years, they invited me to teach an introductory field sketching workshop every fall. It was my first formal gig as an art science integration instructor, and I had nothing but my memories of high school art class to guide me. That improv trend continued. One of my classmates connected me to a work-study job, creating illustrations for a local nonprofit. They taught water science to local school kids and ran a stream monitoring program. I drew benthic aquatic macroinvertebrates, bottom-dwelling insects that live in streams. My arachnophobic childhood had to grapple with those insects up close through hours at a microscope. I also proposed we add a place-based education component using field journaling and nature sketching to add into their science education programs. These projects were my first experience being an illustrator and developing outdoor education lessons. I didn't have formal training or take coursework in these areas. The director empowered me to learn what I needed to. I worked for that watershed education network all through undergrad, along with working at a coffee shop and summers at a guest ranch back home. And I roved academically, moving further and further away from my originally declared wildlife biology major. I counted it up once. I wound up changing my major officially with the registrar's office 7 times before I graduated. I took 4.5 years to complete a bachelor's degree and 2 minors, and I ultimately finished with a major in environmental studies, emphasizing local sustainable ag. That became a major passion for me after I saw a movie about ag business corporations targeting small organic farmers with lawsuits. And then I also had that conservation studies minor and a minor in studio art. After college, with nearly $15,000 in college loans, I moved back home to Montana's Rocky Mountain front. For a lot of rural kids, moving back home means failure. We're primed to see getting out, getting an education, and a job elsewhere as a success. But for me, going home felt urgent. I'd learned mine was a wild, ecologically intact home, the only place in the lower 48 where grizzly bears still use their original prairie habitat every year. It's also the spiritual heartland of the Blackfeet Nation, and I wanted to learn more about this place. I also wanted to share what I'd learned was special about it. I lived and worked on a conservation education ranch for a year and a half, learning about environmental ed and how to assess it, how to read primary scientific literature to understand how to be an effective educator, and a lot about wildlife research. It was a powerful, full circle experience as I shared our ecosystem with local kids like me. I also declined the opportunity to do a paid master's degree that they would have supported. I would have studied conservation education, but at that point I didn't want to. I still thought I was going to do something with sustainable ag. So I moved back to Missoula and took a job running a sustainability nonprofit that taught people urban skills like gardening, tree pruning, and fixing lawnmowers. And then I married a wildlife ecology grad student, and we moved across the continent. My husband got a PhD offer in Quebec City in Eastern Canada. Less than 5% of the population there speaks English fluently, and we didn't know any French when we moved there. We learned about a different language, a different culture, different way of running a country, a totally different education system. I couldn't do anything I knew how to do, at least at first, because I was just learning French and really learning what it means to be a minority immigrant. When I pitched a sustainability column to the only English newspaper in the city, they hired me as a general journalist instead. Among random assignments to cover local school board meetings and elementary science fairs, I started writing about local researchers I met through my husband. I wrote about local sustainability nonprofits as my French improved. I began editing academic manuscripts for French speakers writing in English. And I started connecting through blogs and Twitter with the international science writing and science communication communities. It was an intense time. I was juggling all sorts of part-time and freelance jobs in 2 languages, learning how to make things like a fee estimate for a client and issue invoices and paying taxes as a self-employed person in 2 countries. For a bit of respite, I spent a season working as a research assistant in my husband's study site in Saskatchewan. I did some photography work for Parks Canada and helped my husband study bison movement. I went to my first ESA meeting in Minneapolis on the way back to Quebec from that bison research project. A year later, 4 other ESA members and I co-founded the Communication and Engagement section. I've been co-directing the section and getting more involved with ESA governance and engagement efforts ever since. For several years, I paid my way to meetings and received a press pass registration waiver, without which I couldn't have afforded to attend, and I definitely wouldn't even be part of ESA today. Nearly everyone who does SciComm does something different, and we all come to this work from a range of backgrounds. We also work in a wide variety of professional settings, including museums and as journalists, as professors and researchers, students, and in science communication jobs. Our section emphasizes the importance of these career experiences and the value of ecologists working in all job sectors. And we advocate for ways of keeping ESA accessible and relevant to people beyond academia. Being actively involved in ESA helped me decide to focus on a science communication career. When we moved to Wyoming for my husband's postdoc, I transitioned into full-time freelance work. I wrote articles, did illustrations, consulted on outreach projects, edited more manuscripts. taught drawing workshops for scientists and science teachers. And then, wanting a bit of a break from needing to see every new person as a possible client and looking for a way to level up on my skills, I applied to and I was accepted into the University of Wyoming Creative Writing MFA program. There, I spent 2 years learning how to tell science stories even more effectively. After, I was hired to do SciComm for a research group at the university. My boss, my husband's postdoc advisor, gives me room to pursue my own projects too. For the past few years, I've been an associate research scientist, helping scientists share their science with a wide range of stakeholders. I teach SciComm courses, and I co-founded a campus-wide science communication initiative that I direct. I started doing SciComm research and publishing, became an editor for peer-reviewed journals. I'm co-PI on several major grant proposals and joined the faculty of a science department, albeit in a non-tenure track role. My meandering transdisciplinary past plus the MFA makes this work possible. I was partway into the program when I learned that the MFA is even a terminal degree akin to a PhD. It has made a real difference in legitimizing my role on campus. But this career path has also complicated my experiences in academia. I'm an accidental academic. I love learning and ideas and sharing them, but I only even recently realized that academia was an option for me. I have an uncommon background for an academic working in the sciences, and I don't have a PhD, which administrators have pushed back against. An unorthodox career can be rich and fulfilling, but it takes extraordinary effort, a deep sense of conviction, and really strong advocates to empower such people within systems that are otherwise designed for people with more typical backgrounds. If I can give you any advice based on my own experience, it starts here. Build up yourself and others. Find ways to build your skills while contributing to causes that are meaningful to you, whether they're in academia, in your profession, or in your community. Doing so can enhance your sense of purpose when you're struggling, feeling behind, or wondering why you're even here. But be strategic about the balance between your advocacy and technical proficiency. Articulate goals that affirm you, and don't look for external affirmation. Especially in academia, you likely won't get it. Instead, work from a place where you affirm your own work and goals, and then use the systems and opportunities around you to build toward those goals. Rhonda Montgomery has a great article about this. Take leaps of faith in yourself. Even if you don't know where you're going and you can't explain what kind of job you'll have at the other end, it's worth it. Try new things, go unfamiliar places, challenge yourself. And don't feel you have to compartmentalize your interests. A lot of famous scientists could have quit their jobs and successfully pursued careers in art, literature, and music because they were also good at those. And arts integrated methods can even lead to better and more inclusive science. Have faith that your interests and skills, your background, your identity can be part of a whole complete self as an ecologist. We can collectively, those of us who are a little less typical, make space for each other. Do work that pushes you to grow. Nearly every role I've had required me to learn a tremendous amount while on the job. In the academic space I work in now, I'm still learning every day about how academia works, how to help other people leverage academic training for work beyond academia, and lately, assessing broader impacts. Also, anyone can enhance their writing and drawing abilities. You need to be taught the basics and then you practice. Same goes for professional soft skills like leading meetings and organizing projects. Get into spaces where you can practice that early and often. Get paid for what you do, even when you're new to it. Valuing your own knowledge and time is critical to getting other people to do so. Make sure other people know that they should be getting paid too. Help people understand that they don't have to choose between science experience and a part-time job, that they can get both in one. Find your people. If they aren't in your work environment or in your community, find them online. Professional networking is critical, and it's not just for finding work or getting references. People can help you be inspired. It's important for having friendships that will help you believe in yourself and for having people with whom you can discuss professional interests and challenges. You will also want to find people who care about things you care about, but approach them differently. Recognizing the limits of your own knowledge and learning how to build and work in teams is essential. Finally, along those lines, be a colleague. Even if you're in training, you will learn and grow more if you work and volunteer at the highest capacity you're invited into or can invite yourself into. For example, as soon as possible, become one of the organizers and decision makers versus an audience member. Doing so will build lasting interpersonal connections. And keep in mind that advice about getting paid. You should aim to do this work in paid roles. And or if you're in the position to, you can work to provide payment for the people doing it. Thanks. I look forward to connecting during the live Q&A on August 4th. That's at 1:00 p.m. Mountain Time or 3:00 p.m. Eastern Time. And feel free to connect directly if you want to chat more about science communication careers in or beyond academia. My contact info is on the screen. It's bmerkle, BMERKLE, @uyo.edu. Take care.